We're now over halfway through this championship season, so I think it's about time I updated my championship predictions. Let's jump into these. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. Now, the championship at the moment is all a little bit muddled because everyone's played a different amount of matches due to all the postponements that we've had recently, but with most teams now being at or just past the halfway stage, I thought it was about time that we went ahead and updated our predictions that we made from the start of the season. Now, I did do this video with Ryan from the Second Tier podcast over on their YouTube channel. I'll leave a link to that in the description down below. We did our combined table in that one. But I'm bringing you my predictions here today, and I have made a few tweaks from that table I originally brought up. But as always, I want to get your guys' views and verdicts on this one in the comments down below. Leave your predictions. Who do you think's bottom 3 at the end of the season? Who do you think's making it into the top 6? I've tried to be a little bit bold with some of these shouts as well. I didn't want to be boring and just leave it as the table as it is now, really. I've tried to go out of the box for a few of them. But as always, if you're going to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and stick around for some regular championship content. Without any further ado though, let's hop into these. Coming in at the bottom of my table, I have gone for Barnsley, and I do feel like this will be a pretty popular pick for 24th position. They've been comfortably the worst side in the league so far this season, and I just feel like Poya Asbaghi has come into a situation where there's just too much to do between now and the end of this season. They're in a situation where it would take a huge turnaround of momentum between now and the end of the season. They've only won 2 championship matches this far into the season, 14 points collected, and come the end of the season, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this Barnsley side were like in the running for one of the worst we've seen in the championship over the last decade or so. They've been that bad so far. 23rd place then, I have gone for Derby County. Now, they are on a terrific run of form at the moment. They had those 3 consecutive wins followed by that brilliant comeback at the weekend against Reading to level that one up at 2-2, but so much at Derby is dependent on what their squad's looking like coming out of January, and at the moment it's really difficult to make a prediction on them because we've got all the news of a potential takeover. We don't know when any of that's going to go through, what their team will actually be looking like come the end of January and things like that, and so yeah, it's a tough prediction to make. Would I like to see Derby do the impossible and survive this season? Part of me does want to see that, to be honest, because it would be such an incredible story, and the job that Rooney has done with that team so far this season and the personnel who are giving absolutely everything out on the pitch at the moment, it could be an absolutely bonkers second end to the season. I'm certainly not ruling that out, but so much needs to happen from now until the end of January for all the stars to sort of align to this, you know, survival push for Derby. So at the moment, my gut feeling says that they'll run it close, but come the end of the season, they may just be cut off, and that 21 points may just end up being a little bit too much to overcome, but they'll certainly give it a good go. And in 22nd place, and there's that final relegation spot, I have then gone for Peterborough. So I have gone for the bottom 3 who are currently there in the championship at this point in time. Peterborough, I hold out a little bit of hope for, because we have seen glimpses so far this season when they've looked quite competent, but that's also been matched with far too much inconsistency, particularly away from home so far this season. If that's a trend which is going to continue between now and the end of the season, I can't see them bridging that gap. It's only 3 points at the moment that they are away from survival, but that away record which has been so shoddy, that defensive record which has seen them concede 44 goals so far this season, I think will ultimately be a little bit too much for them. 21st place, I've gone for Reading. I think they'll just about scrape it this season, but similar to Derby, I think the point deduction will obviously influence their league standing this season, but also January as well. They're in a situation where John Swift is being, you know, heavily talked about a potential move away from the club. If that was to happen, that would really leave them in quite the damning situation, but they do have the benefit of players returning from injuries, you know, particularly Lucas João, who could have an explosive second half of the season if he manages to hit the ground running. But Veljko Paunovic just seems to have lost his way a little bit at Reading. When he first came into that club, it seemed like it was the perfect fit, really. Everything was sort of firing on all cylinders, but the longer that's gone on, the more frustration has grown. Situations happening off the pitch obviously haven't helped things so far this season, but another side similar to Peterborough, where I feel like it'll be quite an inconsistent second half of the season, but I think they'll just about have enough to survive. 20th place, I've then gone for Hull City. They had that miraculous run of form a few weeks ago, Hull, didn't they, when they went on that successive winning period. Before that time, they looked like real relegation candidates, and obviously that has seriously boosted them up the league up until a point now where they only really need to match sort of Peterborough's form between now and the end of the season to go ahead and survive. I think that everyone that I've got placed sort of 21st to sort of 18th to 17th will be largely quite inconsistent for the rest of the season, but from what I have seen of Hull, particularly on the unbeaten run that they went on, I think they will have enough to survive now, as I think I predicted at the start of the season. 19th place, I've then gone for Cardiff City, who are in a little bit of an awkward situation, and another club who I am slightly quite fearful for at the moment, partly because they have, you know, a fairly inexperienced manager in Steve Morrison. He's done the best of his capabilities so far in terms of trying to sort of stabilise what was quite a rocky club when he was first given the job. Obviously they're trying to blood through a few youngsters at the moment, but once again, situations off the pitch aren't helping Cardiff at the moment. The recall of Ryan Giles, I feel like, will be quite the detriment to their creativity in the second half of the season, but I think they'll just have enough to about ride this out. In 18th place, I've then gone for Birmingham City, which will be maybe quite a disappointing league finish, to be honest with you, given the sort of hopes and expectations at the start of the season and how well they were doing, you know, towards the end of last season under Lee Bowyer, how well things started out this time around. But things just seem to have turned a little bit sour at Birmingham in terms of underlying performances, goals scored, sloppy goals being given away at the moment. Maybe some January incomings will give them a bit of a freshen up and boost going into the second half of the season, but I can't help but feel like it'll be another sort of regression to around 18th where they're at the moment. 17th place, I've then gone for Bristol City. Now, honestly, Bristol City I've struggled to call throughout the season as a whole in terms of my individual weekly score predictions. Bristol City could go on and finish anywhere from sort of 17th to maybe up to 11th or 12th, something like that. There's just far too much inconsistency with this Bristol City side under Nigel Pearson at this point in time. They got that win at the weekend, fantastic. You know, Andy Vyman scoring a hat-trick. He'll come up with some moments of magic between now and the end of the season, I'm sure. But once again, similar to the other sides who are having this part of the table, are just too unreliable for a consistent run. In 16th place, I've then gone for Blackpool, who are currently slap bang in the middle of the championship table. What is worth noting though is that they have played more matches than every other team below them. They all have game in hands below them, some as many as 4 games in hand on Blackpool currently, and it was a good win for them at the weekend, 1-0 against Hull, albeit it has been a little bit of an inconsistent run for them recently. They've only won 2 of their last 11 championship matches, and I think that maybe a bit of a fall off from their current league position is to be expected, but 16th in their first season back in the championship, I think is a really good season. They've been the best of the newly promoted sides so far this season, and I think that will be the case come the end of the season. I think they've adapted the best out of all of them. Losing Winter will obviously be a blow. I'm expecting Blackpool to do a little bit of business in the January transfer window, but for setting the foundations of a solid first season back in the championship, I think it's been a decent season so far for Blackburn. I don't think that 16th would be a bad finish for them either. In 15th place, I've then got Swansea City. They're currently 17th in the championship, but do have several games in hand on the teams above them. They've only played 22 matches so far this season. It has been a little bit of a torrid bit of form that they've been on recently. They've lost their last 3 matches. Losing Ethan Laird could be, you know, quite the detriment to the second half of the season as well. But I'm anticipating Joel Perreault and Jamie Patterson to continue their link-up play for the second half of the season. There'll be a bunch of goals to come from those 2 players. I'm expecting there to be quite a few sort of peaks and troughs when it comes to Swansea for the rest of the season as they continue to sort of iron out this new philosophy and game plan under Russell Martin, and then by the end of the season I'm expecting him to have properly sort of established that philosophy, and then heading into next season we really could see Swansea maybe taking off. But I think around about 15th is realistic for Swansea at the moment. In 14th place, I've then gone for Preston North End. Obviously, Ryan Lowe has done a brilliant job in his first 2 games in charge so far, winning each of them. It feels like he's been here for absolutely ages, but only been in charge of 2 matches because of all the postponements recently. But honestly, I think that any finish from sort of 16th up to 10th is probably realistic for North End this season. It's quite congested in that part of the table at the moment, and I think that that's the sort of area where we'll be sort of knocking about. And I think that what North End fans want to see between now and the end of the season is this new sort of philosophy and idea start to come across and transition into the side, signs of which we've already seen in his first couple of matches. But yeah, I'm expecting there to be a few bumps as the season goes on, because it is such a contrast to what we were playing under McAvoy. But yeah, I've got high hopes for the future with North End under Lowe. In 13th place, I've then gone for Coventry, and they were the side who I was probably most unsure about, to be honest with you, because I'm really not sure how Coventry will fare in the second half of the season, because we've seen two quite contrasting sides from Coventry this season. The first portion of the season, they were absolutely brilliant. They started it like an absolute house on fire. Their home form was absolutely magnificent. Victor Gyökeres was scoring goals for fun. But more recently, things seem to have levelled out. They're without a win now in their last 6 matches. Having said that, they do still have games in hand on the teams above them. I just feel like if there's not a little bit of a freshen up in January with some of those positions, we could see a little bit more of a drop off from this Coventry side. But having said that, we have seen what they're capable of earlier on in the season. But once again, anywhere from sort of 13th to 9th, I think is realistic for Coventry at the moment. Slap bang in the middle of the table, I've then gone for Huddersfield Town. Now, Huddersfield have probably been making me look like the biggest mug so far this season, because at the start of the season, like a fair few other people to be fair, I was talking about Huddersfield in terms of being serious relegation candidates, and they currently find themselves within the top 6. Having said that, I just think that there'll be a little bit of a tail off from where they are currently. I've sort of been doubling down on my views of Huddersfield lately, and that could come back to bite me at the end of the season. And fair play if they do go on and make the top 6, because I currently feel like they are probably still seen as the underdog, despite having that place in the top 6 at the moment. They're unbeaten in their last 6 matches now. Corberan is proving a lot of people wrong. I just feel like there'll be a little bit more consistency between the sides who are predicted to finish above them in this table, but time will tell on this one. They've been in for quite the ride so far this season, Huddersfield fans, haven't they? From where they were at the start of the season to now, yeah, it's been a really interesting one. In at 11th place, I've then gone for Millwall. Similar story to Huddersfield as well. Millwall probably more so. Millwall have obviously been in a situation where they've been sort of in this position in mid-table, in and around the top 6 for quite some time now, under Gary Rowett as well. This is certainly a team now which is, you know, fully in his sort of blueprint. It's just always felt like they've been lacking that extra sort of 10, maybe 20% to properly have that push up into the top 6, and it's still, in my gut feeling, has that feeling around Millwall, albeit in January they could turn the screw and make that difference with 1 or 2 additions. In 10th place, I then gone for Luton Town, who currently find themselves all the way down in 16th, but they do have several games in hand on some of the teams above them, having only played 22 matches so far this season. Luton have been a little bit up and down throughout the season so far, really, in terms of consistency. It's not always quite been there, but when Luton are good, I think they're capable of being really good. And I think that some of their underlying numbers so far this season, in terms of like XG, chances created and things like that, would suggest that they are better than where they currently find themselves in the table. And I think that that will slowly start to level out as the season goes on. And I'm just fancying them to have a good second half of the season. I think that 10th will be a really good finish for them. In 9th place, I'm then going for Stoke City. This one feels like history repeating itself. If you'd have asked me in the month of like October or something like that, do I think that Stoke will go ahead and make the top 6? Almost certainly, I'd have said yes. I thought they were playing some brilliant football, and still to this day, I'd say that Stoke have been one of, if not the best sides to have come to Deepdale so far this season, in terms of the eye test, the performance, the football they were playing. When everyone's fit and firing, this Stoke side is more than capable of making the top 6, but once again they've been hampered with injuries to key players, and I think that'll be the difference in the end between them making the top 6. I think the teams I've got predicted to finish above them in this table will have a little bit more about them because of those players that Stoke will be missing. You know, Nick Powell's a massive loss. Harry Souttar, probably the biggest of all. I was at Stoke at the weekend watching North End, and it just feels like unless O'Neill comes up with a plan B to get the best out of the personnel that he's got available to him at the moment, they'll fall short this season. In 8th place, I've then gone for Nottingham Forest. Now, honestly, any of the teams I've got predicted to finish from 8th up to Probably fourth in my table. I think are quite interchangeable really, and it's dependent on a few factors of how they all go on and do in January and things like that. But I have gone for Forest to just miss out in 8th place. Reason being for a few things really. I do like some of the additions that they've made so far this season in terms of Steve Cook coming into that back line. Keenan Davis is another option up front as well. I think that squad depth was one area where I was a little bit concerned with this Forest team, maybe compared to some of the others that they've got around them at the moment, but they seem to be addressing that. Defensively, I think they'll be really strong, but I just have the gut feeling that maybe there'll be one too many occasions where they do come up a little bit light up front. Maybe Keenan Davis is going to be the answer to that, but time will tell. I've just got Forest falling short, but I wouldn't back against them finishing in the top 6. 7th place, I've then gone for QPR, but I'm really unsure about this prediction as well, to be honest with you, because they're well within their capabilities and making it into the top 6 this season. They're in 5th at the moment and on the whole are on a good run of form. They are quite an all or nothing side where they don't draw all too many matches, which could play to their advantage at the end of the season. You know, they've only drawn 5 matches so far this season, so the emotions at QPR always seem to go from like 0 to 100 whether they're winning or losing, but they do score goals. They've got plenty of firepower in there with 37 scored so far this season. Potentially some missing players during January could hurt them a little bit with Dieng in chair, obviously, 2 key players away on international duty. My gut at the moment says that they may just fall below the teams that I've got predicted below them, but they're more than capable of going on a winning run. This part of the table is so tricky to predict. I think the toughest place to predict are these playoff spots. Coming in 6th place though, I'm making it into the playoffs. I have gone for Blackburn Rovers, so not the automatic place where they currently find themselves in the league. I don't think that they'll continue with this current level of consistency, with this unbelievable winning streak that they've gone on, this unbeaten run, and with that draw to Huddersfield lately. But I do think that from the position that they're at now, they have such an advantage of on the teams below them that they're just going to have to sort of match their form between now and the end of the season. And I think they're more than capable of doing that. January will have probably the biggest influence on Blackburn more than any other side in the top 6 because of the Ben Brereton situation, but this prediction is with them keeping hold of him. I think they'll make the top 6 now, albeit I don't think they'll have enough to sustain this consistency to be in with the battle of the top 2. 4th place, I've then gone for Middlesbrough. I think that Chris Wilder has them playing in a way at the moment where they've achieved the consistency which they were really struggling to at the start of the season. I think that Wilder came into a group of players which were disjointed and a little bit broken, but there was a hell of a lot of potential within this squad. You know, I was backing them for the top 6 at the start of the season before Wilder has come in, and since they've had that upgrade of managers, I think that Middlesbrough are a real shoo-in for the top 6 at the moment. Obviously, things could go wrong. They could pick up injuries to key players and things like that, but I'm of the opinion, and it's looking like they'll continue to keep on strengthening within the January transfer window. They've already gone ahead and done so with the introduction of Aaron Connolly as well. Yeah, I just think that things are looking really good for Borough in terms of a top 6 finish. In 4th place, and this is where we're going for a bold prediction, I am going for Sheffield United. Now, they currently find themselves 13th in the league table. However, that is with the asterisk that they have plenty of games in hand on the teams above them. You know, they have 4 games in hand on Huddersfield, who are currently in the top 6. If Sheffield United are to win each of their 4 games in hand, they'll be on 44 points, which would currently see them 4th in the Championship, just 1 point behind Fulham. So I think there's serious potential with the Sheffield United squad to go on a real run for the second half of the season. I think that this COVID break that they've had has possibly come at the worst time possible, because before that they were starting to show some real consistency, not just in terms of results, but actual performances as well. We were seeing a much more solid side at the back. They were creating plenty of chances going forward. And they have one of the best squads in the league. You know, this was something that we established at the start of this season. It didn't look like it was ever going to happen under Jokanovic, but since making that move to Heckingbottom, they've been firing on all cylinders. So my bold prediction is that Sheffield United are going to absolutely fly from now until the end of the season, albeit they might have just left it a little bit too late for a top 2 push. But I do back them at this point for a finish in the top 6. Egg could be on my face at the end of the season, but I'm backing the Blades at the moment. In 3rd place, and just missing out on the the top two, I've then gone for West Brom. Now this one really all depends on the impact that Daryl DK is going to be able to have, because DK could bridge that gap between West Brom and decide who I've got predicted to finish in second, who come the end of the season there probably won't be all too much between, albeit I do think there are some other issues at West Brom which DK won't be able to solve in his own. You know, that was highlighted once again at the weekend, but he'll go a hell of a long way to improving this West Brom side. I think they've been the fourth most wasteful side in the Championship so far this season, so naturally bringing a clinical striker into that team will no doubt lead to a lot more points being recruited in the second half of the season. I do think that another sort of maybe creative midfielder certainly wouldn't go amiss for West Brom, but we'll see what they do for the rest of the January transfer window. At the moment, I think they'll run the top two very close, but I just think that the two I predicted to finish above them may have a little bit more about them, but time will tell on this one. Coming in second place and then just edging out West Brom for that first automatic promotion spot, I've then gone for Bournemouth, who I think will just about get over the line this season. I think that what we saw from Bournemouth, particularly in the first couple of months of the season, was their ability to go on an unbeaten run and how good they can actually be when they've got a full squad to go ahead and pick from. You know, their bad run of form sort of coincided with injuries to key players, particularly at the back, but recently they've obviously picked things up with back-to-back wins in the league. It looks like they're going to continue to strengthen this squad throughout January as well. I think that when everyone's fit and on form, this Bournemouth side will get over the line, particularly in those sort of midfield areas. They have the ability to control games better, I think, than West Brom do. And I think that that will just lead to a few more points being picked up in those sort of crunch games come the end of the season. And that's the slight bit of difference I just have between Bournemouth and West Brom. Because in terms of first 11 v first 11, there's a hell of a lot of talent in both squads. But coming in first place and winning the league for me this season, we are going to have Fulham. Now, this obviously does come at a time when Fulham themselves have been on a bit of a dodgy run recently. You know, they're without a win now in their last 5 Championship matches. A lot of draws for them recently. Then they've obviously had this COVID break as well. But I just think that pound for pound, in terms of the squad they have available to them, what we've seen from Fulham when they've been at their best this season, I think is not really comparable to anyone else in the Championship. I think that when Fulham are on song, no one else comes close to them. In terms of scoring goals this season, they've been an absolute joke. They've got the joint best defensive record so far this season as well with West Brom. In every single position of the pitch, I struggle to pick out a weakness from this Fulham squad. I think that it'll only be a matter of time before they pick things up, get back on a winning way, and I think they'll end up storming the league this season, but I could be wrong with that. But guys, as you can see to the side of me, those are my predictions for how I see the Championship table shaping up come the end of the season. What I want to know from you guys is which predictions do you agree with, which do you disagree with, and I want to know your bottom 3 and top 6 predictions especially. That will wrap it up for today's video though, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's video. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular Championship content. Get all your thoughts in the description down below. Well, apart from that, thanks very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.